I have one more of a plethora of experiences since Jane died. I have one more that I want to share that has had a quite a profound impact on me and my practice. Although, I don't have any answers, but it was so helpful for my mind. And to see that real life situations, when you have the Dharma in your life, it can help make some sense of it by opening up your mind and to make some sense of how our own minds function and how do we actually experience and see life. And as Venerable Damcho said this morning in her great motivation, is that these impactful life events over time, the darkness of ignorance puts part of that impact to sleep so that we don't have a more direct access to that very powerful experience, that we can really use the Dharma to see it differently. So when Jane died, I asked the doctor if I could just sit with the body for about an hour, and he said yes. So I just sat there and looked at the body. A few minutes ago there was a living, breathing being, my sister, and now there was a corpse. So what or who was I looking at? Now, where was Jane? What was Jane? It's an odd thing because I had never been with a person who had died in their presence. I've been with some of the kitties at the Abbey. The wildlife around here is dying all the time. You find them dying, but not to be with a human being. I could call on her face in a second. I could bring to mind how she walked, how she talked, how we engaged, how we had adventures. The images were immediate. But where was she? Where did she go? Did she still exist, or did she just sort of vanish into thin air? Because all that's left of this bed is this very scrawny corpse. Then I looked at the body and see that it's just flesh and bones, knowing that inside there's some diseased lungs and a very comprised heart. And with no sign of life, I got this sort of startled, taken aback in my mind that said that what I was looking at, as the teachings have said this over and over again, is that my sister was just a mere appearance to me. That this body, that mind together that had been labeled Jane, and at the time of death, she was gone. And that I was sitting there saying, that can't be true. She's got to be here somewhere. She cannot be a mere appearance because of all the emotions, all the imagery, all the experience that I had with it, and the way that I was understanding what does mere appearance mean. Who was I attached to? Who did I love so much and have those adventures with? There was no one here now, but there was not anybody there now, but who was there anyway, even before she died, all those years of life with her, all those years that she had? There was no way that she was there the way that I thought that she was. How much did my mind create my sister beyond just that veiled conventional level? She was so solid, she was so real from her own side, my sister Jane. That was the label, that was who she was. Sitting there with the body, I just got this sense of this very tenuous karmic relationship between a body and a mind, with all this array of karmic causes and conditions bringing this mind stream, this general I with all of its momentariness, putting it together with all these physical components, also changing moment by moment, coming together. And all these karmic causes, I'm sitting going, what are the karmic causes, conditions that kept this karmic appearance arising and ceasing, thinking and living and loving and eating and sleeping? And then those karmic conditions for all of that cease to exist. And to just see how tenuous, how nominal, how surreal it was looking at that body. That even in the fullest of her life, was it true that Jane was still just merely labeled on that body and mind? Just merely labeled. I was so flabbergasted sitting looking at that body that for about 15 seconds I had this sense of what illusion might mean. It was so surreal. And now Jane Nesbitt, gone forever, no longer exists, even merely. I was just sitting there going, the illusion that little window that was that's all this is. Yet there was someone that I loved, there was someone that I was sad in leaving, there was some relief that her struggle was over. No one inherently there, but yet functioning as a sister, mutually dependent upon their sister. So then after Brian, he had gone down to have lunch. I think he was done with that part. We left the hospital and we went to Jane and her partner John's home, which I knew very well. They had bought it 15 years ago. I had visited them on numerous occasions there. But as we came up to the driveway, as I had had this little window of illusion-like right appearance, we come up to the house that they had just recently painted, and it's just screaming, "This is where Jane lives!" Larger than life. Everything about it yelled at me, "This is who Jane is." Everywhere, the garden, the trees, the color of the paint of the house, pea green with eggplant doors and beige window frames. That's my sister Jane. They had taken on some life form, some meaning, totally coming from their side. So then I go into the house and I'm like, oh, there's just the volume of Janeness is just, somebody has cranked up the volume. You know, she was such an intentional decorator. The carpet, the furniture, the hardwood floors, the house plants, some of them she'd had for like 30 years. The paintings on the wall, the wall paint, the seashells, the books. There's a family photo gallery in one of the upstairs rooms that has the Fleischer family, John's family, and our family from grandparents and parents and people I don't even know, but they're up there on the wall, all creating life. She had created, and now I was seeing her in all of it. I mean, it was just waves, energy traces of Jane were just coming into my heart, coming into my body. And then I was just stunned by how powerful the sense of her presence in these objects. So then I go out into the garden that I'd helped her design many years ago. It was just in full bloom, just gorgeous. And there she is, even screaming even more loudly because she loved gardening as much as I did. And then I go into the garage, and there's her clogs and her garden loves and the potting soil and the yard waste all sitting there just as she had left it, like she'd walked away. So it got really shaky. It got really shaky, not in a bad way, but in a challenging way. So I wrote Venerable an email during this time, and she wrote back and said something really powerful that just kind of grounded me in my Dharma practice. She said, if anybody but you or your family were to walk into that house, they would not see her in any of it. There would be no Jane coming alive in their minds. They might have other thoughts about the pictures. Do they like them? Do they like nice furniture? I hate the color of the house, whatever, but there was no Jane. There was nothing about Jane. It was only Semke and Draylin and John and Brian. It was all fabricated by my mind. And how all that conceptuality can bring so much sadness, so much grief, so much suffering. Everything I touched seemed like she was there in that object, like she had left an energy trace or some essence of her in that object. It was the oddest thing to just watch my mind impute meaning on something where there was none. I mean, it was just like insanity. I felt like I was like on some sort of drug. And so, coming back to the Abbey, I've been really grateful that I had, the Dharma just kind of, it came to my mind, and I said, instead of just flooding myself with my emotions and flooding myself with attachment, the Dharma came and said, well, challenge this experience. How do things exist? Even just to notice, to challenge my preconceptions about Jane, about her life, about these objects. It helped in that after the first shock of seeing her die, then going into her home, knowing that she'd never be there again, it really helped to sort of settle my mind and not sort of fall apart or start clinging. It made it a lot gentler. It made it a lot less personal in a very profound way. But it wasn't so much that she didn't exist at all. It wasn't that we couldn't talk about her life, that we couldn't share a lot of memories, and to really, enjoy reminiscing, but to not be so hooked on the conceptuality that was just wanting to imbue a lot more in that was really actually there. So now my wish is then to turn all of that little bit of, clarity to then turn it on this one and to say, who are you? Who do you think you are? As Venerable says. Where are you in all of this? Are you willing to challenge? Are you a karmic appearance? Are you merely labeled, dependent upon this body, this mind, changing moment by moment, existing because the causes and conditions are there for you to exist? And you have no idea when those causes and conditions are going to cease. And what are you going to do with that? How solid do you think you are? So this is what I'm going to, before the darkness of ignorance covers my mind and sets me into amnesia, I really want to use this opportunity to see that not only, mere appearance to the mind does not negate my willingness to transform my mind, to be able to cultivate bodhicitta, my good heart, that's all, it still functions. That's the piece I keep going back to, is that it's still functioning, as merely labeled as it is. It still functions. It can still renunciate. It can still renounce. It can still develop bodhicitta. It can still become awakened, whatever that is. And so that's kind of my little koan right now. As Venerable says, it is the puzzle. And so that's kind of where I want to leave everybody is, who do you think